Hello.
Thank you. I'm Marge Dean. I'm president of Women in Animation. And welcome to our 6th annual WIA World Summit. We are so grateful that every year Annecy and MIFA allow us to come back and pull everybody together and have really important conversations about important issues and making changes in our industry. So thank you. And I hope everyone has a great day and you're ready to think about things and get excited and charged up. So I'm going to turn it over to Miguel.
Thank you, Marge. I'm Michael Marin, the CEO of Annecy. It's a great pleasure to welcome you after three long years. During these years, our fights have not been put aside, and I would like to thank Women in Animation team not only for today, but for the commitment at all times. I would like also to thank the speakers and all the partners who made this day possible. And I would like to thank and greet the other association that also work for a world, where equity and parity will become a full reality. Les Femmes s'animent and MIA. I wish you a good day, a great festival, a great market. Enjoy, and I leave the floor to Véronique Ancona, our head of MIFA. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here. Yeah, thank you for being back. We are very proud to welcome the 6th Women in Animation World Summit. This day is a very special day for us, launching this animation event, which makes this day very symbolic to Annecy. Since 2017, when it started, we've seen figures rising in schools for women attendance, where parity has been reached for several years now, and by consequences, we are now starting to see the number of projects rising among those we are receiving for the MIFA pitches, which we organize every year during MIFA. For short scientific categories, they've reached parity those last years, and feature films category, which was the category where less women were represented, will present as many women as men this year. We will have the pleasure to welcome women from Zimbabwe, from Georgia, from Bosnia-Herzegovina, France, and Hungary. This pitching session will take place on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Other very promising example with FLEA, awarded in many festivals around the world, distributed in more than 100 countries, nominated in 3 categories at the Oscars and receiving the MIFA Animation Industry Award this year, has been produced by companies led in majority by women. Among the 6 co-production companies, 4 of them are led by women. These are a few examples of parity and diversity, which is being reached in different categories during MIFA, year by year. Though we do not wish to isolate or categorize, our main concern is that underrepresented groups get access to the selection processes by accompanying them all along the year through trainings, workshops, and presentations. This has been the case for the pitching session dedicated to Nigeria, which will take place soon. It has benefited one of our workshops in Lagos in partnership with Netflix, named International MIFA Campus. 2 Nigerian women will be able to pitch their projects. We invite you to attend this event tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Since 2017, we've been adding more events along the week to give light to the many women associations in animation around the world. This year, several will have the opportunity to present projects made by women, Les Femmes s'animent, as Michael said, and MIA Animation for Spain will share a pitching session on Wednesday, 1:45 p.m. to present 8 projects coming from Gabon, Niger, Benin, France, Spain, Ivory Coast. And Stories and Women, initiated by Women in Animation and the International Federation of Producers Association, in partnership with Disney and Triggerfish, will present 6 stories written by women. And finally, Japan Media Arts Festival will propose 2 sessions during the week. One partner screening on Thursday, 6 p.m., showcasing 9 works created by inspiring and audacious women creators in Japan. And one MIFA campus session on Friday, female creators thinking outside the box to change the future of anime. I invite you to consult the whole program. They need your attendance to those events and your support so that all those projects can be produced. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a very good summit. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready to get started. So I'm going to introduce Julianne Crommett, who's going to set us up and walk us through the day. And Julianne is on the Executive Committee of Women in Animation, and I'll let you tell them the rest of what you do.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, should I do that one? Sure. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Marge Dean, round of applause. A round of applause. Hi, everyone. Wow, we're back together in a room. It's wonderful to see you all in person. Yeah, that deserves a woo. Woo! Oh, it's wonderful to see you all. If you're looking for a mask or you'd like to wear one, you have a custom WIA one in front of you in your seat. So if you didn't get one, please raise your hand at some point. We'll make sure to get one to you. If you'd like to wear it, obviously up to you. But it is wonderful to see you all. For those who don't know me, I'm Julianne Crommett. I am a proud board member of WIA. I sit on the executive committee. I am the secretary and the inclusion chair. I've worked in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space for 13 years now. Whew! In media and in tech. I actually am on my own since you last saw me. I have my own company now, Collective Moxie, because change takes our collective moxie. For those who are not familiar with that word, it basically means extra oomph, and it's a word from the 1930s, give or take. So if you watch any of those old Hollywood movies, you hear a lot of women with moxie walking around. So with that, I am also producing animation these days, so I'm actually now on the creative side with all of you, and so it's such a pleasure to be here on multiple levels, and I can't wait for our journey today. By the way, I am also your host for the day this year, so I will be taking you on the journey of the day between panels, yes, which means you're going to get my comedic stylings all day. Get ready for the jokes as the coffee continues to hit me. I'm a little jet lagged still. And so with that, I'm going to introduce the theme for the day and then hand it off to our first panel. So the theme for today, Gender Justice, a Global Call for Inclusion in Animation. And hold on, let's see if this works. Maybe. Uh-oh. Oh, all right, there we go. Since we last got together, a lot has happened and is happening. I would be remiss if I didn't call it or name all the things that we have gone through and are going through collectively, which are fundamentally changing our world in so many different ways. And that includes the COVID-19 pandemic, the racial justice reckoning that's happening globally, rise in violence and or legislation against women, trans, and gender non-binary people, as well as many other groups of people, a mental health crisis globally, as well as an economic crisis and deep changes in our industry. This is a lot we are carrying into this room today. It is a lot we are carrying. And so I just wanted to take a minute and see if this clicks again. Maybe. Click again, whoever's doing there you go. I wanted to take a minute to breathe. For all of us just to take a moment before we dive in today, maybe close your eyes and just think about where you are, where you're sitting right now, being present in this room. We are here together to make change today, to think deeply about ourselves, about each other, about this world, maybe heal and process some pain today that we might be feeling, but that today is about being present for ourselves and for each other. So I just want you to take a moment and just breathe in and breathe out. Do one more. Breathe in Breathe out. All right, open your eyes. Live in that feeling today. Let's just process everything together. Have the moments if you need to take a breath. It's totally understandable. We're in this together, okay? And continue to breathe. Let's continue to breathe throughout today so that we continue to focus on making change, yeah? All right. So let's take that and then dive right in. Next slide. So, and we'll have to click through these. So, a recap. For those of us, how many people, this is your first WIA World Summit? Raise your hand. Wow! Welcome in. I'm really glad I'm doing a recap then. Really glad I'm doing a recap. Wonderful. Well, welcome in. For those who did not raise your hand, welcome back. We are so glad to see you, and welcome all of you who are new, which is the majority of the room. This is incredible. All right. So click each one. Let's see. Recap. Well, so in our first WIA session, we talked about unconscious bias. So I'm just going to redefine some of these terms from our previous themes, all right? Unconscious bias, right, is the shortcut that our brain takes because of the amount of data we have to process at any given moment. So I'm going to say that again. It's the shortcuts that our brain takes because of the amount of data we have to process at any given moment. So what that means when we make shortcuts is that we rely on biases. We rely on the things that are easier for our brain, which are often stereotypes, they're often tropes, and they're often assumptions that we have around people, right? So that undergirds or that underlies everything we talk about when we talk about gender justice. So I want to make sure that we recap that. Next word is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Can we click 3 times? I'm sorry, the clicker's not working, folks. Next one, and next one. 2 more. Perfect. Diversity, inclusion, keep clicking. Equity, next one. Oh, belonging, yep. All right, perfect. So diversity, inclusion, and belonging. We covered these in a few summits back in the day. And so if you all remember, I like to quote Vernee Myers on this one, which is, diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance, and belonging is that your music is played and you can boogie. I like to add the dancing part. And so just so we think about what those concepts mean, right? And then I always like to question, which is the structural question, who's doing the inviting? Who's hosting the party? Who decides who gets invited to the party, right? So these are all the things when we talk about gender justice, we're questioning those systemic things that are happening around us every day, right? Who's owning the power dynamic in that situation, yeah? Next word. We have equity, right? Equity different than equality, right? Equity means that we are meeting people where they are with what they need given their specific circumstance to make it equitable for them, right? To make it fair. It is different than equality. Equality is giving everybody the same thing to make it fair, which doesn't account for people maybe being in different places of privilege or power or a different seat, right, within the system. So equity is accounting for that. Yes? And then the last word we have was our last summit, which is the business case, right? Everything we talk about here at the WIA World Summit, when we talk about equity, when we talk about belonging, we talk about changing power structures, when we talk about gender justice, right? It is all undergirded by the fact that there is a strong business case for what we're doing. It is not just because we believe in this morally, ethically, that it's the right thing to do, which we all do in this room, right? But that we are stronger as a storytelling community in the stories that we tell, in the things that we make, in the way in which the whole industry runs, right? It gets better. It is more profitable. It is a better storytelling industry because of all of these things. So it's really important to always talk about that too, I think, because it's the 360 of the conversations. When you add all those things up, next click, you get to gender justice, which is today's topic. So all of these things undergird the concept of gender justice, right? And so what is gender justice, Julianne? You're probably wondering, I keep throwing it around. You're like, what does that mean? So next slide, please. These are 2 widely accepted definitions from the Global Fund for Women and Gender Justice US, which is gender justice is the redistribution of power, opportunities, and access for people of all genders. All right, so let's think about that. Redistribution of power, opportunities, and access for people of all genders. Gender justice envisions a world where everyone can thrive regardless of their gender, gender expression, or sexual orientation. So by the way, very specifically moving beyond definition of women, right? And expanding into the notions of being inclusive of other underrepresented gender identities, right? Trans, non-binary, gender expansive. And so this is why this is so critical, because it thinks about gender also not in the binary terms, but in one that is more expansive to the actual gender identities that exist worldwide, right? Next slide. And then this is a definition that our WIA team came up with. I'm looking at Jenna in the front row, which is, I think, a really nice comprehensive one. And you're like, wow, Julianne, that's a lot of words, but we're going to say them, all right? Gender justice is a system of equity and fairness for people of all genders, including women, men, transgender, and non-binary individuals. And by the way, anybody who identifies themselves in whatever gender identity they would identify. In a world, gender justice, people of all genders participate in defining and shaping the policies, structures, and decisions that affect their lives and society. As a result, all people have the power and access to opportunities to improve their lives. Let's take that in for a second. We have a pretty big call ahead of us, right? Ooh, yeah, let's take that in. And what I think it really means for us, next slide, is to really think about everything with an intersectional lens. We started talking about this a few years ago with WIA, and I think a lot of you have been thinking about this because it's your lived experience. It's your life. We're all multitudes, aren't we? We're multitudes of identities. And so when you think about gender justice, it intersects with every other form of social justice and equity work. And these are just a few, right? Racial, LGBTQ+, disability justice, immigrant, right? Socioeconomic, environmental, and more, right? Gender justice intersects with all of the other fights, opportunities, and work that we're all doing in this world to make it more just and equitable. And it absolutely has to be with an intersectional approach, again, because we are multitudes. We're not just one thing when we walk around this world, right? I identify as Latina, right? I am also a woman. I'm also of a family of immigrants into the United States, which provides a very unique experience. I'm bilingual and bicultural within the context of the United States, right? That defines me in very particular ways, just like your own lived experiences define you in really particular ways, which is why we have to think about the work that we are doing to create equity in all of those ways, right? Next slide. And so as we move forward, here are the things that I want you to start to think about today as we dive into our conversations, right? We're talking about disrupting gender and power dynamics. When we're thinking about this, it's the fact that power has been assigned unequally in this world, in the structure of this world, right? Tends to be assigned to be more male, to be whiter, able-bodied, not grappling necessarily with disability or living through a disability experience, right? Usually American in many ways, US-centric. There are so many things, right? Wealth, rich money, right? That is where power often resides, and that's part of the issue. So what we're talking about is what is that redistribution of power within the gender dynamic, right? Shift power where it's concentrated. So let's move power, redistribute it in different ways. What does that look like in the world that we're living in today, in the world we want to live in? Approach again with an intersectional lens, what we just talked about. Create a new paradigm where all genders can thrive equitably. This is a big question. I'm going to pose it in a second, but what if you could just redesign the whole animation industry from scratch? What would it look like? If you could invent it from nothing today, what would it look like to be more equitable, to be just? I ask you. I don't have the answer, but I think collectively we all might together. So I ask you to think about that today. And intentionally and purposefully, and this is so important, including transgender, non-binary people and anybody who identifies in an underrepresented gender group as part of this conversation. All right? Next slide. And this is why it's so critical in storytelling. Many of you are storytellers, and you know this, that the more intersectional our approach, the more intentional we are, including stories that feature characters who identify as trans, non-binary, gender expansive, that we actualize on screen, right, through our medium, our experiences, which start to change the perceptions and the paradigms and the unconscious biases You see what I did there? That exist in our world, right? That's exactly. Oh, yes. Thank you so much. I love you, Vani, really. I know. She's a plant. I put her right there so she could just applaud randomly. Thank you so much, love. Thank you. And so, this is why storytelling is so powerful as part of this conversation, because what we do as storytellers actually start to shift the power dynamics, the stereotypes, the tropes, the defaults that people think about each other and about ourselves. That is why this is so powerful for us today as storytellers. And we're going to talk about that throughout the day in different ways. And again, that we are multitudes as human beings. And because as storytellers, we get to do that. We invent whole worlds on a screen. Is that pretty powerful? So what do we want that to look like? Remember I asked you what would the animation industry look like if we could just reinvent it from scratch? Well, you all do that as storytellers every day. You look at the world and you get to invent it every single time you put pen to paper. Every single time you look at a computer screen, every single time you think about something, an idea that you want to, put out in the world. So I challenge you to think about it through that lens as well. And the responsibility, the deep responsibility that comes with that, right? Next slide. So looking ahead on the WIA front, you're going to hear more from us this coming year on all of these topics, and specifically looking with a much more intersectional and inclusive lens when it comes to gender. We've been doing it, as you all know, in the work for a while. We're going to keep talking about it more explicitly, and we want you all to be a part of that journey. So you'll continue to hear from us on that. We'll continue to build on this work of the last 2 years. And again, we will be reaching out to you to continue to have this conversation in different ways, because we want to build this world together, all right, in the animation industry. Next slide. And then today's question. So we're going to dive into this. I'm not going to talk too much about it because we're going to have literally conversations all day about it. But how does gender justice help us solve this animation labor shortage? We have an explosion of content. We have an explosion of opportunity, right? We have just so many stories that need to be told, the room to tell them, right? But we haven't made room for everybody. So, gender justice starts to get at that, right? How are we building structures, patterns, habits that start to change people's access to this industry, their ability to thrive in it, which is different than just coming in and working in it, right? We have to make this a place where it actually works for everybody, right? And then how do we then continue that as a continuous cycle so that we continue to create opportunity, but also the opportunities are there, can continue to be filled by all of us, not by just the folks who are in this room today or the ones who have no idea what WIA is or what this animation industry is, right? So that's why gender justice sits at the heart of the opportunity that we have before us. And this is so different than the live action space. We have this opportunity. We can lead. I want you all to remember this as we talk today, that the animation industry can lead in this conversation. And isn't that a beautiful thing when you think about it? So we just have to step, that's right, applaud it out. Animation can lead. You're a plant too. Thank you so much. Thank you. And isn't that a beautiful thing, really? But we have to step into our power to lead. And that's the thing I'm going to also ask you to do today, is think about what that means and what you're going to do when you walk away today to be a part of the leadership of that change, because we know this empirically. We know that animation can change the world. So let's do it. So next slide. That's the question I've already asked you, so continue to ask. And then next slide. And so today when you leave, I want you to move forward, again, thinking about action, thinking about leadership. And these are just some ideas to take with you as you go through the day, that we have to have a global perspective and approach. This cannot be centered in any one country or any one market. And I'm looking at all of us who are American. Thank you so much. We've got to do this with a global perspective and approach. We have to be inclusive, inventive. I put this word very specifically, inventive. I keep talking about reimagining. That's what I mean. We have to be inventive in our approach. The things that have been happening aren't working for everybody, so that means we have to do it differently. Otherwise, that's the definition of insanity, right? You keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So let's be inventive and get creative, which we're really good at as the animation industry, all right? And intentional. about every decision we make, every hiring decision, every decision we make in our interactions with each other, in the cultures that we're building together. Learning from each other. This is something we don't do very well in general, which is we all try things in vacuums, but then we don't share with each other about like what worked and what didn't work. So today we're going to focus on case studies for a good chunk of today, so we can be learning from each other, the good, the bad, the ugly, so that we can actually work toward doing the things that are working as opposed to repeating the things that are not. And then it's not enough to hire people. We have to create a change in the culture that we are building through animation. I just want to say that again because it is critical. We can bring and talk about reinventing things as much as we want, but if folks arrive into the conversation, into the creation, right, and they don't feel like they belong, that they can boogie, right, that they can dance, then we haven't done our job correctly in the reinvention, all right? So with that last slide. I want to thank everybody today who made this possible. Can we give a round of applause for our amazing Global Fund donors and the leadership circle here? Next slide of donors, too. Keep on clapping. We love them. If you see your company, just shout a little louder. Yes? And then next slide. We have more. Keep on clapping. And I see some individuals. Let's clap for them. There we go. And then next slide. All right, and this is our agenda today. You'll notice we have a QR code up there. If you scan the QR code, it will actually give you the agenda on your phone as well. And I think we have it is in the program, Jenna? Or we're handing it out. Perfect. Erin is handing it out as well for you to scan on your phone so you can have it mobily with you today, so we don't have to necessarily keep putting up the slide. And with that, I am going to leave you for the moment, but you'll see me again. Remember, you're not getting rid of my comedic stylings today. But I leave you with, again, the question, what are we doing to actually build the animation industry or rebuild the animation industry that we want to see and the one that works for everybody? And what does that look like? What does that feel like? And what can we leave here today to do tomorrow to start to put that into action? So with that, I'm going to hand it over to the fabulous Eleanor Coleman to lead our first conversation for the day. What does gender justice look like around the globe? Thank you all so much.
Does this work? Yes. Hi, good morning. It's lovely to see you all here. Maureen, super. So as Julianne, thank you, Julianne. I don't know where you went. There you are. Just always so inspiring and eloquent. It's wonderful to be here with you all today. My name, as she said, is Eleanor Coleman. I'm an American. I've lived in Paris for over 30 years. I co-founded with other women who are here a sort of sister organization to WIA called Les Femmes S'Animent here in France. And we've had the great pleasure of working together with WIA for many years on this summit. And I'm thrilled to be hosting this panel where we're going to sort of unpack this theme and get us all launched after that brilliant introduction. So I have with me Mounia Aram, Vanni Balgam, Paola Bofo, and Maureen Fan. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. So we are going to just start to really explore this theme together with you. The idea is to sort of unpack it together, get started, and as the day goes on, we'll get more and more concrete with Julianne's prompt, her agenda. It's wonderful to see so many faces from all over that I haven't seen in so long. Thank you all so much for coming this morning. So what I wanted to start out doing was just for each of you to just very briefly, because I know your bios are in the program, but just briefly explain sort of who you are and what where you work primarily, because you're from all over the globe, and how you see gender justice right now in your region. So Munya, maybe you have a microphone. Does everyone have a microphone?
We all have, yeah, I think. Yeah. Thank you, Eleanor. So I'm very, very happy to be here today. I'm Munya Aram. I'm the founder and president of Munya Aram Company, a company that I launched in 2019. But I've been in this industry for 19 years now. I live in Paris, but I'm originally from Morocco, and my company is specialized in African animation. Why African animation? It's because I want to see more diversity in kids' content. I'm building a studio in Morocco, my home country, to be on the ground in Africa. So what does gender justice look like in the region? For me, to start, I want to give you a little bit of overview. It's very complicated because culturally in Africa, we teach our little girls to be quiet, to be very polite, and literally to be on mute. I mean, you need to be nice and shh, don't talk too much, be nice, be kind. So how do you fight that when you grow up? When you have some engagement that you want to share to the world, but you grew up learning that you need to be quiet. So luckily, I grew up in France, and my parents took me to acting class, so I raised my voice by acting. But it's not the case for people in Africa, especially for young women. So this is why I also launched this company to work with talented women in the continent and also in the Caribbean, because I work with Jamaica as well. And I know, hi, and I know that they are super talented, but we need to hear their voices. Our voices matter, and with our voices, we need to share our engagement, and our stories need to be told. And the best tool is animation. Animation, we can use beautiful characters, beautiful little girls that we can put on the screen that can empower little girls now and teach them they can be whoever they want to be in life by looking at these little characters that look like them. And they are girls, girl power, superheroes. So this is what the goal of my company and the purpose of working with talented women in Africa and the Caribbean. And if it's not women who are working behind the projects, they are in the animation, the leaders of the stories. That's my goal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Namaste. My name is Vani. My long name is Saraswati. So I run a small development boutique studio in Los Angeles called Dancing Atoms, and also in India. We primarily focus on writing for children and making animated feature films. I used to work with DreamWorks Animation and set up Rhythm and Hue studios in Asia. And about 7 years ago, I took the big challenge of saying, you know what, I need to step out and I need to write my own films. And so it's been one of the most challenging things to be in very high-level executive positions and then step away and to give myself the permission to fail, give myself the permission to create, and give myself the permission to take another birth with creative storytelling. So my intention, very consciously, has been to just tell really good stories from India, from Southeast Asia that have not been told. Some of you probably know this, but my father actually came to Annecy in 1984. He sold my mom's jewelry, made some art, and had a booth here with all his artwork from India. And he was shunned away. He was told to get lost. So 36 years later, I'm here standing with some of his creations, but reinvented and repackaged. So Dancing Atoms, I want to do is literally comes from this symbolic idea that we are in the body, but we're all dancing. And we're all dancing for something that's beautiful within us and to express ourselves. And so the idea is it's a home for creators and it's a home for everyone. So that was the idea of what I did.
That's wonderful.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Yeah, nice story. Just one other question, Vani. One other question. Could you talk a bit about gender justice as you see it in that gigantic country of India?
Actually, Eleanor and all of us had a little Zoom call before this session to say, like, what are we going to prepare for? And I think what intuitively came to me was, of course, there's a lot of baggage that we all carry. And I thought, what for a second if I dropped all of it? What would my new look be? And I think the answer was love. You know, I want to be treated with respect. I want to be treated with love. And so I look to my right, I look to my left, or whatever, my directions are all off. But I look around and I say, I think the other person wants exactly the same. And I think that's one of the things that I'd like to bring. But going back and reflecting, as Eleanor has requested me to do, I wanted to be a filmmaker at the age of 16, and I was told that I will be sexually manipulated on a movie set. So it's as blunt as that could be. It wasn't an easy time when I was growing up. There were no bathrooms for women to start with. So has that changed? Yes, it has absolutely changed in India. Things are looking so much brighter and better. But there aren't still any creatives that are standing out there on the shoulders of these gigantic studios that have emerged in India. So my voice matters, and I want to make sure that there are more women that are empowered from a 1.6 billion population, that there are at least 10 women that stand out and say, hey, I'm a filmmaker and I'm a fantastic creator. And I want that for all the Southeast Asian countries. You know, we don't see a lot of women from there being represented or being put in the forefront. So yeah, that's, did I answer that?
Yes.
Or did
Thank
I invent
you.
it?
Hi, hola. My name is Paula. I'm from Argentina. I'm queer. And this is my first time here, so I'm kind of nervous. But yeah, I work in comic books mainly, and I studied animation, and I started working in animation a few years ago as a freelancer in pre-production. And I joined Patricio Plaza's Ojo Raro boutique company, which is focused mainly on adult animation, because that's what I focus on, adult themes. I like to work a lot with political issues and feminism and queer and also ecological issues. I mean, I always use art to communicate what I need to say, and it has always been that way. And I feel like I've been very inspired by Latin Americans' feminist movements, Ni Una Menos, and all the abortion laws that we fought for. So I think that visual narrative is a very strong medium to communicate those political things, and it's a very cool and effective way to get through emotionally to people, you know? So I wanted to start working in animation again, after working a lot in comics, to connect with this new medium that can be very vast and emotional. And also because I want to take space, the stories that I love the most come from women, come from transgender identities, non-binary, people of color, and all the people that usually are like put aside. So I need those stories to confront. I need those stories to change the world. So that's why I want to take space and join these kind of communities. And I hope that when I have more years in this industry, I can make space for them, and I can give them the space to be creators, directors, to write their own series and make a change for everyone. So yeah, that's what I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, can you guys hear me through the mask? Thank you for bearing with me. I have 2 unvaccinated babies, so I'm still being extra cautious. I'm CEO, co-founder of Baobab Studios. We're the 9-time Emmy-winning interactive animation studio. We're known initially for VR on projects such as Invasion, Bonfire, Crow the Legend, Namu, and also Baba Yaga. And our IP is being adapted into films, TV shows, books by people like Disney Plus, HBO Max, Penguin, Macmillan, etc. So we create IP. We have cared about telling stories from different cultures and from women in particular. And that could be shown through the actors and actresses that we bring onto our shows. So for example, John Legend, Oprah, Kate Winslet, Jennifer Hudson, who just won an EGOT today. One of the projects was actually for Baba Yaga, where she won the Emmy. And we specifically told like Native American stories, Korean stories, all different cultures. And that was on purpose because me as a female minority, if I'm not doing that, who is? I mean, now lots more people are doing this. I'm really happy about that. In terms of gender equality or gender justice, I come originally from Zynga, where I was vice president of games, so from the gaming industry, very male-dominated. Farmville was my game. Before that, I was at Harvard Business School, also very male-dominated. So gaming, Silicon Valley business. And it was difficult being in those places and being one of the only women. Things like, for example, starting my studio, which I'm sure many of you can relate to. If you have the same exact pitch deck to pitch to VCs, the same exact pitch deck with a male voiceover versus a female voiceover, you're 40% more likely to get funding if you're a man. Same exact pitch deck, right? So needing to think about how I can act stronger a certain way when I'm going out to pitch. Or even in the gaming industry, just lots of stuff that I'm going to go into. Or even at Harvard Business School, actually Frances Fry, I don't know if you've heard of her. She's an amazing professor from Harvard. She went to help fix Uber and all the cultural issues. She actually said to us in business school, women, you in particularly get lower scores because most of the grade at Harvard Business School is based off of class participation. And you Asian women in particular score the worst because you speak up the least. We have since learned from the research that it's not because women raised their hand less or spoke up less. It's because they found out that the professors weren't calling on the women. And so they were telling us to be different when actually it was the professors who had to change because they started tracking who was raising their hand. So when I talk about gender justice, it's about the systemic, like if we had more women who are providing the funding, right? Rather than just, they just recently had the talk about how Sheryl Sandberg is leaving and they're kind of taking stock in how gender equality and justice has progressed in the tech industry, and it hasn't that much. There's more women in the industry, but in terms of the higher levels, not so much. So we need to put the women where the money is, because the money seems to drive a lot. So I'm especially interested in that, and also how to fix as long as the gender, I forget what's called, the niceness paradox exists, where we need to choose to be either liked or respected is there. How to get rid of that so that we can be respected and liked at the same time.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very interesting, the niceness paradox. I think that so much of our, or at least my generation's education was really based on that. And so I think there's a whole social piece in this that's so important that Julianne touched on about how do we empower our children to break from kind of our social programming. I really appreciate what you said. Thank you. So what I think would be interesting next as we sort of move deeper into this is that if you could each just sort of talk about some examples where you feel like the ball is moving forward, some positive things that you see around you. We've sort of set up this sort of tough situation from a hierarchy perspective and social perspective, but just some examples of where this is actually moving forward. Do you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that I am here is a good example that it's moving forward. Yeah. I told you when I launched my company the first time, I was really scared. I was really nervous about doing that. It was not only I'm a woman, I'm a woman from the diversity, and plus I have 2 kids. Wow, that's a lot. So people tend to scare me You know, when I decided to be an entrepreneur, not only because I wanted to make money, it's moreover because I have an engagement that I want to share with the world, and it was the best way for me, is to launch my company. But it was really hard as a woman, because everybody tend to scare you. How will you do? How will you do that? And they never do that to a man. And for me, I feel that it is still challenging, but the fact that I'm here, and it's been since 2019 that I launched my company, and I'm still here, and I'm still working on that, and I have some projects in development, so I'm really, really happy about that. So I have a project with Cameroon that we are co-developing with France, and we have another series that we are pitching right now, and 3 others magnificent projects from Jamaica, from South Africa, from Nigeria. So the fact that people are hearing my voice, it's a very positive for me. So I get the meetings. I get to meet the people. So whenever I send an email, I get a reply. So that means something to me and to the project that I'm bringing with me and to the people that I'm embarking with me in this journey, because not only it's super challenging to bring African stories, but bringing stories led by women or with strong female characters on it that are not princesses, because I'm tired of princesses that are waiting for the Prince Charming. We are not like that. We are the Prince Charming, okay? We don't need a man. We don't need to wait for a man to do something with our lives. So this is what we're going to tell in our animation stories, because we want the girls to know that they can do anything they want in life. So if, like with this animation that I shared with you from Jamaica, the little Cam who dreams to be an astronaut, she wants to be an astronaut. She's 5 years old. Her dream is going to be her ambition, and her ambition is going to be her work. So this is what we're going to tell to the little girl. You want to be an astronaut? Be it. Go for it. And don't wait for Prince Charming or Astronaut Charming. You are the astronaut, okay? So this is really positive that people are hearing our stories, our pitches, and we hope that you're going to see these stories soon all over the world.
Great.
What was the question again?
The question was, where do you see examples of this moving forward? And
Got it.
especially, I think you could talk about your Women Creating program.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like Maureen said, me being here in this stage means so much, not just to me, but what this represents to a lot of people when I go back home to India. To say that, oh, wow, she did it, so which means that I can do it. And I think that's one of the most amazing things of having someone like Women in Animation just standing out there and saying, finding that talent and putting the spotlight on people like us. So I think that's the first step that I'm here, like Maureen said. What have I done personally is I've been very fortunate to be in very high leadership roles. While I set up Rhythm and Hues in India, we tried very, very hard. We brought in women. They didn't succeed being compositors or, even animators. And we said, you know what? We're going to invest another 6 months in you. If you fail, it's on you. If you succeed, it's on you. It's really on you. So we did that. And today, I ended up, I think, in my 13 years at Rhythm, I ended up managing over 800 talented artists. And out of that, today, there are so many talented women that are leading studios all around the world that are very high, well paid. In fact, more, they're paid even better than the men, is what I want to say. Because that was one thing that I kind of educated women. You got to speak up and ask for that. If you don't ask, no one's going to give it to you. I wasn't given, personally. So I would always encourage them to say, why would you not want more? If you're doing more, you just need to put it out there and do that. And that's another thing. So right before the pandemic struck in 2020 or 20, I lost. But whenever the pandemic had happened, I was kind of at home in Los Angeles and very stressed out and kind of even a little depressed, to be very honest. while there were a lot of panels happening in India, I realized that they were all men. And I was very, very angry. And so I called up a couple of people and I said, what's happening? Are you telling me there's not a single woman in Indian animation industry that can be on a panel with these men? And or even moderate? Like, really? And so that started the moment where I was asked to be a part of the Unreal Fellowship here in Los Angeles. And I'm not a technical person and I didn't want to be a part of it. But I went through it and I came out feeling so empowered, primarily because it allowed you to stay home and create. And so my mantra became, stop worrying, start creating. And the minute I took on to that, I started with the help of a very close friend in India, and I don't know if Quinton is here. But yeah, so we basically started what is called the Women Creators Program last year. Shortlisted, I think, over 200 people. Out of that, we did 24 candidates from India, and they were all paid $10,000 to go through this 5 weeks, 6 weeks rigorous training program. And they went through the program, came out with their films. So that became such a big success that this year we did the second one, which just started 2 months ago. With the Women Creators Program too, and again 21 candidates out of 200 people. We're doing them in bits and pieces, so half of them got selected just 2 days back, and the other half are still getting full education and stipend to move forward. So I feel like that's one of the most beautiful things, is how can you give back, like Eleanor was saying, like you got to lead. So yeah, that's what I've been working
Congratulations.
on. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to dive off a little bit and talk a little bit about comics, because we thought that it would be great to also mix it with this conversation about animation. And I think that something that I like to compare comics and animation is that animation is this moment where you are like suspended in time and space, where you're in this immersive situation of sound and images. And comics is like this little treasure that you take to your house. And in graphic novels and comic scenes in Latin America, a lot of women have started making a lot of really intense and important stories in books. And it's like they have changed the whole game in publishing. It's really amazing. Like, the most intense and best-selling books in Argentina and in Chile and in Colombia are from female creators that tell their stories. And they're actually very political books a lot of times. Power Paola or Soleotero are some names that I can think of. And they tell very strong stories, and it has changed the whole game. And we started doing that, and we started making women festivals for publishing and for women creators, because men wasn't giving us space. And since we started doing that, the publishing calendar has changed, and the most important books came in our women's festivals. And publishers go there to look for new talent. So we make space for new voices, new women that didn't have space before because they were women. Men's festivals wasn't giving them space. So we made them feel at home, and we made them feel like it was a secure space to fail, to try, to auto-publish and to tell their stories. And then a lot of women have made publishing contracts in those festivals we started organizing. And I think I feel that connection to what's happening in animation right now, you know, Eleanor, because in my case, I started immersing myself in these programs. I'm very young, I'm just starting, and I'm feeling like I have the space to fail, I have the space to feel contained. I feel at home with you all, and I just met you. And I feel like it's okay for me to try, you know? And I think that in a lot of artistic spaces, women don't have the chance to fail or to be mediocre. And sometimes men do very mediocre films and they won Oscars, and we have to be perfect. And I think that's really important for us, to get the chance to not be perfect. We don't need to be perfect every time. We can make something that we just learn from. Like, I did this, maybe it wasn't perfect, but I'm learning from this, and this will make me better the next time. Thank you.
I'm really thankful for lactation rooms and how they're in lots of places now, especially, I'm serious. Back when I hear my other women, they said they had to, pump in the toilet, like in the stalls. And so being able to just force it so that every single studio has these amazing lactation rooms makes a big difference, or even at the airport. So that's one thing. So that is definitely progress. The other thing is, I think it's education of men, just awareness that men realize that there even is a difference at all, where the response isn't like when we're have like a woman get together. I remember at one of my previous employers, the man was like, "That's not fair. When are we going to get our men get together?" I'm like, "You don't get it." So that's not like PC and acceptable, I guess, not for the people to say because they're more educated. But lots of men specifically putting together panels, they are always trying to make sure that there's at least one or two women in there, especially Fumi, who's back there and helping a lot with the WIA, make sure every single panel that there's always female representation. I had never seen men purposely try to do that before. Also, I think like COVID as well. To be honest, I think COVID hurt women, at least based off the research, more than men because of the need for childcare and whatnot. But I have seen for the men who had to be remote at home have to see everything that's happening at home and actually being aware of all the load that women sometimes have to carry. And now when we're going back to work, they had to help out more at home, and now they're taking on more of those responsibilities and just awareness of all they had to do. I also think there's definitely progress in just the storytelling. I was so excited about Turning Red, that we can show women being horny, that in animation and menstruation, things that we shied away from. So I was really excited about that. And I'm really hoping that with the questioning of business models right now in the entertainment industry, and there's a bit of a retraction, that we don't go to the safe space that we all know previously. In recent times, there's been a lot more emphasis on storytelling for different cultures, about different perspectives. And I'm just asking for all of you who do have power to make sure that we don't just go back to what we knew previously and what is safe, and continue to invest in those stories.
Yeah, that is yeah, I think that's a really, really important point. How it's often in times of difficulty that there's great innovation. And so there is sort of a conscious thing that we all need to collectively make happen, where it's like, okay, we're not going back, we're going forwards. And that's not always easy. I wrote down in my phone when you were talking earlier, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and thinking you're going to get a different result. And I think that really leads, that was a great lead into what you're saying, and it's really difficult. It sort of triggered in me like all these things that I do the same way, thinking that it's going to make a different result, and there's some sort of program, like self-programming jig you need to do to be like, wait, I've tried that, it doesn't work. Like, there's another road. So I really appreciate that, what you said. And also, I do think that this whole idea of gender justice, I know that for me, the word justice kind of sets off this kind of legal, kind of constraining, sounds like prison or something, justice, like, and we've been sort of we explored that idea of justice when we were preparing this panel. And there's, I think that also the idea of justice, if you just even break the word down, which we did with Vanny and Munya and Paula, there's something about being just. There's a deep aspect, I think, in justice, in being kind, in being inclusive, which is a theme that we've talked about a lot in these different summits, and this idea that Julianne broke down earlier about the different phases of really creating an inclusive environment where you're actually in a place where you're organizing and you feel like you're thriving. And Vanny had a very interesting take on this idea of justice that I was hoping you could share with us, because I think it's a nice transition into exploring different themes and also opening this room up to you. The idea of this summit is that there's a lot of participation. It's not us just like thrusting this thing, but that we can sort of create some dialogue. So I was hoping that you could explain and we could start to explore your new definition.
Oh my God. I'm kind of nervous. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So as I think I kind of hinted it earlier, all life brings us to this one moment that we're all here together, breathing in this one space, all in Annecy, and sharing this very powerful medium of women in animation, empowering each other. And so I thought about what would justice look like? What would justice herself ask and say, what does justice look like? And I think it looked like a big red heart. Because love is the only way that connects us. And justice really comes from the idea that, hey, I want to be fair to the person next to me. I want to be treated fairly. And so that's basically where I kind of thought that when I thought about animation, and when I thought about what is it that I wanted personally for myself and my studio, Dancing Atoms, and it felt like expansion. So I felt like love is in expansion. Animation is expansion. Creativity is expansion. Connection is expansion. So I felt like justice is nothing but expansion of ourselves. And that's what I intuitively felt at that point and continue to feel right now, is we're all here to expand ourselves, not to be tinier. I think we want to become big on screen, off screen, at home, with families. So I think that's what I believe right now.
Really nice. Thank you.
It'll change later.
And I wanted to go back to you, Maureen, when you're talking about educating boys in this kind of framework of expansion, because you're creating a lot of content and you come from a place of diversity as your base. So you sort of started off at setting the bar. How do you think that we can do that collectively and specifically in the animation industry to drive that social change?
I think a big thing is about inviting men into the conversation. So I'm so excited about all the men who are here, because I think one is definitely educating women so that we even know the biases, so that we know what to do. To be honest, though, when I first started researching all the statistics about all the things against us, it made me feel overwhelmed and it made me feel more insecure. And I was like, how do I go up against these biases? And it's interesting because research says that the more confident you come across, the more leader-like you are seen. So you may be super stupid, come across as super confident. People think you're more leader-like. And people also say that women sometimes present as less confident. And when I'm getting all this research, it makes me feel less confident. So I almost have to psych myself up and be like, no, I have to ignore all that research and think I'm just going to be me and I deserve to be here, all those things. But I also realized, so it's still important to educate women, but don't let it cripple you, which it did to me in the beginning. But also, there was this crucial point when I was at Zynga where I wasn't getting promoted to general manager at the time, and I was pissed off because I knew I was better than all the men who were getting promoted. And I actually asked my business school professor to email me all the women in research, all the research on women in leadership. I printed all those things out and I highlighted them and I gave it to my boss. At the time, I had a really great relationship with my boss. I felt safe doing this. And he said, you know what? You're right. The reason why I wasn't promoting you is because this is Farmville. This is the crown jewel of the company. And I felt protective of you as a man. And if you were a man, I would have already promoted you to let you swim with the sharks. But because you're a woman, I felt that I needed to wait until you're 2 levels above so people wouldn't attack you. But he said, I realize that now, and I'm going to fix it. And what it told me is he wasn't trying to be mean or sexist. It's because he didn't know his mindset, because that's what we've taught men they're supposed to be like. That means to be a man, to protect, and like I'm supposed to be more vulnerable, whatever it means to be a woman. And so educating him is what changed things. And so we need to be teaching the system or those in power about that. And so I know it's probably way too in people's faces, but I do mention some of the stats that this is super obnoxious. But sometimes when I go into meetings, I'm like, if I were no offense, if I was a white man, I'd be president by now. But saying that, I like joke about it, but then it makes an uncomfortable laugh, but then it reminds them of the bias there is. And I find that that helps neutralize a little bit with them on my level at the same time. Not, you guys shouldn't do that, do what works for you, but it works for me sometimes.
Wow, that was beautiful.
That's very strong. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible when you start to change social norms, right? It's a very powerful journey. And I'm wondering if any of you have any other ideas about that transforming social norms.
Can I add something? I was thinking about what you said about love, and I think that like tenderness is like the new punk, you know? Like right now we're so used to like fighting, and after COVID, everything, it's like we're like, oh no, socializing again. And I was thinking about that, about how tenderness and taking care of each other and building community is like the only way out, you know? We've been isolated for so much time, and sometimes that has like increased a lot of insecurities for women and for other identities. And I think that one of the only ways that we can change this paradigm, I think I said it wrong, sorry for my English, paradigm, it's by building community and taking up these spaces, you know? And I think that's why I felt connected to what you said about a big, big heart. Because I thought the first time you said it, I thought of a big hug. And I was like, yeah, that is justice, and that is just too. And I think that a lot of times we have these new ideas of empathy, you know? That is a very, I think that comes a lot from the feminine world, having empathy and thinking about what you just said about the lactancy rooms and that kind of stuff. I mean, I think that women usually tend to have those things in mind about the necessities of other people. And I think that we have to take that and put it on front and make more workspaces that are safe for everyone to feel contained and to give the best of themselves, because if you're contained, you can give the best of yourself. If you're nourished, is it? You can be better, and you can feel protected and come out and know that you can expose yourself because you're safe. That's what I think of that hug.
Yeah, I was thinking about Maureen's example, and we need to teach the boys, the men, that women don't need to be protected. We don't need to be saved. We are strong. I mean, we might not look like strong because we are thin, but we are strong. Please, don't save us, don't protect us. We know how to protect ourselves, and don't have this how do you say it? Yeah, expectation about women to be fragile and to be saved from something. I mean, I don't know what you want me to be saved of. And yeah, we have our voices again. This is something really important for me. Speak loud and speak with our tools, with animation. And this is the best way to teach the kids that women don't need to be saved. Women are heroes as well. And they got the power in a way. I mean, they can be super feminine and they can be powerful at the same time. Because I don't want to get rid of about my femininity, because I love that. But I can be feminine and strong, and I am, and we are. So this is something that we need everybody to know and to learn, that it is important that we are not fragile. No, not at all. And we can do the same things as men do, and we can get powerful situations and lead big business companies and be ambitious. And ambitious, it's not a bad word. And I keep telling the young women that I met, you can be ambitious. You have to be ambitious. Use it and stick to your goal and to your dream. And yeah, it's not only for men. It's also for girls, for women. It's for everybody. Men can be ambitious and women as well. So this is only that I wanted to add. Thank you.
I want to say I love you all. I do. I don't know any, or I know some of you, but I do want to say that I do love you all, because I think that's the only way I can connect. There is definitely waking up every moment, we do feel insecure with the other because we feel like they have something better than I have, or this stupid imposter syndrome that comes in all the time to say, oh my God, look at her, what she's done, and look at her, you know, she's so cool. And we're constantly comparing ourselves because that's unfortunately the way that our biases work. But I really want to break those biases, and I do that with consciousness. This morning before coming to the panel, I cried a lot, and I'm sharing this primarily because I was told I was insecure, and I couldn't take it. And I couldn't take it because it was the truth, and it hurt. But I said, okay, I accept I'm insecure. What can I do about it? I said, okay, just accept it and move on, because that's the only thing you can do about it, and work on your insecurities, because you're insecure because you're comparing yourself with someone else. But if you didn't, I think you're beautiful, you're perfect, you're who you are meant to be at this point. So I want to share that very personal moment with all of you and say, just, you know, love yourself as much so you can love the person next to you. Does that work?
Thank you. So I think it would be nice to kind of open up now. We have a few more minutes to sort of get your reactions to what we're tossing around. Does anyone feel comfortable to kind of reacting? Thank you.
It's okay.
Yes.
Can I stand?
However you feel comfortable.
Okay.
Maybe there's a long, this might be long enough to actually for you to.
I can also project if I need to. Sorry.
Here.
Thanks.
Please.
I just wanted to comment on kind of what both of you were talking about with this idea of strength and women not being strong, because we have this idea of what strength is as being, you know, stiff upper lip, showing no emotions. That's strength. But I work with a wonderful group of women who cry all the time, and I love it because strength is not just not showing emotion. It's having the bravery to show that emotion and knowing that we have each other's backs, that we can have that empathy and make that connection with one another. So thank you very much for your words.
Here, you can stay wherever you feel.
It's all good. I will, out of respect to everyone, but still. I wanted to make one comment, especially with, like, I think you all touched on this, about men not needing to protect us. A lot of the projects we're working with deal with men honestly thinking protection is love. Protection is how we take care of us. And so telling them don't protect us can sometimes come across as, well, then what do we do? You know, give us an option. I think that's what we need to do, is give them the option of support us. Be there with us. Walk by our side when we need your help, when we're like, I can't do this. They say, oh my gosh, yes, you can. I'm going to help you get there by being your partner, your friend, your support. Don't go out there and fight the battle for me. Tell me that I can, and then back me up on that. So I think that if we can also include that with, thank you. If we can include that with our message of don't protect us, but don't leave us alone either, because we don't want to be alone. Gosh, you know, but anyway, I want to say thank you for bringing that up, but I just wanted to add on to it.
Yeah, and we love men. Yeah. Yeah, we love men.
I have 3 of them. No, not.
Yeah, thank you very much. So hi, I don't speak English very well. I am from a French-speaking country, Côte d'Ivoire. And what I want to add is, in Africa, there is different regions, so different places where women have sometimes not the right to speak, but sometimes the right to speak. In my country, Ivory Coast, women have the right to make some work, to make animation if they want. But the things which is very difficult for us is the language. For example, if I am here and I'm able to speak English, it's because I work a lot, because maybe I'm from this part of elitist Ivorian. But for the young woman who want to make animation, who speak only French, and who don't have any fund of school of animation in her country, who want to come here, she will not understand everything that we say today, and she will lose it. So I think that for equity, and to help the gender justice, we should have some, I don't know, translator or some woman in animation with French or Portuguese for women from Cape Verde or from this country who don't speak English, but who try to make something beautiful for their country and their community. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Alejandra. I'm from Mexico. I live in Mexico, born and raised. Well, it's no secret that in Latin America, misogyny is pretty strong and thriving nowadays still. If there are any Latina people here, you will know. So I just wanted, more than adding anything, I just wanted to say thank you all. It's my first time in Annecy. It's my first time in a women in animation panel or anything. And it's very inspiring to hear that you've risen up from situations where sometimes where you come from can come in your disadvantage. And there's always opportunity. You have to be determined, you have to be strong. But it's like you say, when you see someone doing it, you think, I can do it too. So I just want to thank all of you. It's very inspiring to hear you. And well, congratulations on all you've achieved.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I want to say I'm really inspired by this panel. My name is Kenya from Jamaica. And there's something that you said about connecting with men and sort of allowing them to understand what it is that we're experiencing. I have actually found that being in Jamaica, running an animation studio, it has been with the power of connecting with a few men as thought partners that has helped me to uncover some of even the unconscious biases that I had, which I didn't realize were keeping me in the position where I was, because they're like, hold on, you're not asking for this? You're not doing, hold on a second, how are you really entering the room? And I found that there are certain things that when you're working alongside certain men, you may not even be aware, I wasn't aware, let me put it that way, of some of the conversations that were probably putting me in a space where I wasn't allowing myself to access the things I needed. And so I think having thought partners who are really supportive, I think someone used the word supportive, is so important, because then it's through that one-on-one connection that we can then enter and probably change the minds of the people in the room as well. So for me, that's what gender justice also looked like, partnership with men who are on my side. And I think that that can help to open the floor for other Caribbean and African women as well in the space. So that was it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your discussion. It was very interesting. I'm in charge of a film festival in the World Health Organization. So we have given a prize this year to a story in India. It's the Health Innovation Special Prize we have given. And the film is called For Every Girl, a Forest. So I thought of your discussion, I thought about this film when listening to you, because I have a question for all of you, in fact. This story, just to make it short, it's every baby girl born in a village in India, they plant 100 trees. And when they grow up, the trees grow up. And it's a way to reinforce, I think, you know better than me the situation in India, it's really to reinforce how girls and women later on are considered in the village. And associating also protection of the environment, reforestation to that is quite symbolic. So, Munya mentioned the Prince Charming, or the Charming Prince, I don't know. I think my question is about the women characters that you would develop in a film, animation film. It could be based on stereotypes like the princess and so on, but how would you, or it could be based on other stereotypes which are the famous women, the the women who made history or who fight at certain periods. So this is also, in some comics books, this is also covered. But what about telling stories of just any girl, any woman who is not exceptional? And like in this Indian story, it's a reportage, it's not an animation. But what about telling stories from the communities, from the daily life of people, and making nice stories about them, so that it's not exceptional women, but it's just any woman who could be seen differently. So my question is about that, about the storytelling and the characters that could be developed more. I don't know. And by the way, for all animators here, if you want to submit films in our festival next year, it's open to animation, fiction, and reportage, and it's about short films from 3 to 8 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Sure, yes.
I think there are about 200, maybe more people in this room. I just wanted to tell you that in India, there was a wave where if a mother was carrying a girl child, they killed her. They killed the child even before the child was born. So there was a huge, huge wave where women were killed even before they were born. And it has changed now. The legal system has come in place where you're not allowed to scan what the child is in your mother's womb. So you can understand when we talk about these things, films need to be kind of made. So many children were not allowed to come onto this planet because they were a girl child. So we're very, very fortunate to be sitting here and having these conversations. So absolutely, I think if we don't do something about the small thing that we hold on to, which is animation and film, but one of the most powerful mediums on the planet is animation. And so it can communicate these beautiful messages even in the tiny, remote villages of India or Africa or wherever else, that it can empower people and children and tell men also that, hey, you know what, like, what are you doing? Just be aware of this stuff. Just talking about men, I just want to kind of clarify. I love men too, like I don't want the men to feel offended, especially my fantastic husband that's sitting here. He's left everything and just ran here to attend this one session all the way from Los Angeles. So obviously there are some phenomenal men on this planet. And the fathers who've raised us have always told us that we are the center of their world. So there are some great men that we always look up to. Some great partners that have collaborated with have been men. So yeah, like I bow to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to add something. I mean, to have gender justice in some countries, as the lady from Ivory Coast was mentioning, animation is a tool, but we need some training programs. I mean, if we don't train the talents that are there and they want to do animation, but they do it by themselves, learning by themselves, if they don't have access to a perfect training like we have in Europe or other countries, I mean, they cannot share their stories, or their stories will stay in the continents. So we need to give them more tools to be able to speak louder and to spread their messages. And if it means adding some English classes for some French-speaking countries, we need to do that as well. So the talents are there, but we need to help them.
Yeah, I agree. Education is absolutely the way through. Do you want to add something, Maureen?
Yeah, I wanted to address the question. The question that was asked about telling stories about just women in the communities. One thing that when Domi was putting out her movie Turning Red, I realized like I had to, as the Asian American community, go make it as successful as possible because it was a representation of me. But at the same time, I thought how unfair it was that like it had to, in a way, represent every single Canadian American, Asian American experience. What you were saying, like you should be able to fail, you should be able to tell different types of stories. And I think the solution to being able to tell more stories about all different types of women is for there to be more. Because when there isn't a lot, the spotlight is on you. And then let's say her movie failed. I would think it'd be difficult for another Asian American woman perhaps to tell another Asian American story, or people would wonder about that. And it's not fair to put all that pressure on that. So just to answer the question, to have more of those stories just means that there needs to be more of us creating those stories and being allowed to tell those stories.
Yes.
I feel like one of the I think one of the words that come to my mind is intersectionality. I come from, in Argentina, is very few resources for people who want to do animation. You have to have a lot of privilege to do it. It's very expensive. A lot of people can't access to learn English. I have a lot of colleagues that can't speak English, so they maybe couldn't be here. So I think that boys learning how to be partners and not our dads, but to walk by us, and getting to start working with other places in the world that don't have the resources to get the talents to have the opportunities are two of the main focuses that I think that we should be thinking of. Not only women doing the work, but also letting men join us and work with us, and giving opportunities to countries that don't have them. I mean, Latin America has a lot of talent, but we don't have the money. A lot of people can't afford it, can't afford to travel, can't afford to study. A lot of the schools are private, so we don't have access to that. So I think that's very important, what you said. We need to train people to have access to those opportunities, not only to showcase themselves, but to have the skills and the security. Because if you research, if you have what it takes, you will feel secure and you will feel confident to go there and do the work and present yourself to be a leader or to work in the industry. Sorry, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. We just have time for one more comment. There was somebody in the back. Yeah, I think there was. There, her, yes. Yes, thank you for your patience.
Hi, thank you to be there. Just wanted to add that what we need to see in animation for women is a woman in charge, and not only a courageous or strong woman, because I'm the founder of a company, a really small company for now, and I have no example of women in animation in my childhood. So I would like to ask you to do that. So thank you.
Do you want to add something quickly? Yeah. I can project. Hi, okay. I think you should use this. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Queen, and I am a Nigerian living in the U.S. And I wanted to touch on what you mentioned, Paula, about the power of cross-country collaboration. There are lots of mainstream stories told about the Western world, but Nigeria, Africa, LATAM, they have untapped talent. And the power is in coming together in a room like this, having the opportunity in person to meet and connect and come together and form a force. And think about your own tribe. The systems are meant to break us. The system was designed with that women in mind, and now we're trying to force ourselves into the system. We could do that by the power of binding together and changing the narratives. And I'm so glad that we have a space like this, an opportunity to come together and just talk about our shared passion around elevating women. So as we are all here in person, connect with each other, exchange your contact, build your network, expand, and make a commitment to sending the elevator down to the other communities, the other countries that have their voices but don't have the platform to tell their stories. So this is such a treat. Thank you.
I think that's, thank you. That's a lovely way to end. Time is up. Pardon? Yeah. On fait quelque chose là-dessus. So thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for a lovely, inspiring conversation. And we look forward to sharing the day with you.
Panel will start momentarily. Please find your seats. I think videos, yeah, perfect. And then we'll be showing some case study videos while we do the transition. So you'll hear about some of the case studies that we'll be walking through a little bit later in the panel. So please enjoy the videos of some of our case studies for the day. Enjoy.
At Animation Ventana Sur, we believe in the huge talent of Latin American women. That's why we've been doing this mentoring program for 2 years in a row. We hope that other countries will join us and create their own programs, and this will be key to keep on growing the network, connecting talented women all around the world.
From Key Awards, we truly rely on this program of mentorship. The team of animation offers a quality and personal program with wonderful experts.
My role as a pitch expert and as a coach is to help female directors and female producers not just to tell their storytelling, but also to accept themselves as a person who counts in animation. Change is not only possible, change is just happening. That's why we need relevant and meaningful programs, mentoring programs, dedicated to female talents. Animation by Ventana Sur is not only a mentoring program for pitching, it's also a mentoring program for processing, nurturing, maturing, and self-acceptation.
So now it's the turn of the teams to share their experience with the mentoring program from Animation Ventana Sur.
Lo que diferencia este programa de mentorías con otros es esta visión femenina que hemos tenido a lo largo de todo el laboratorio.
Un espacio de aprendizaje entre creadoras para poder generar comunidad.
Durante las mentorías, el proyecto tuvo un crecimiento exponencial. El intercambio con los mentores me ayudó a definir, a tener confianza en el proyecto, a encontrar los puntos débiles y fuertes y saber mejores maneras de transmitir lo que quiero contar.
Me encantó que ese programa tuviera un enfoque tan fuerte en la comunidad femenina. Cuando entré a la área hace casi 10 años, el ambiente no era tan acogedor. Me reconforta ver programas como este que fomentan la unidad entre nosotras.
Es un programa que promueve la comunidad, la creatividad y la colaboración entre mujeres latinas que trabajamos en animación.
El programa de mentorías destaca porque te da ese espacio de contención donde uno puede ser vulnerable, por lo tanto uno puede equivocarse más.
El programa de mentorías es aprendizaje compartido.
The ACE program is a really fantastic opportunity for women to get experience in leadership roles that they might not other have the opportunity to be involved in.
The ACE program helped me in my career path in that it gave me opportunities to actually experience what it was like to be an art director and to work on an actual project as an art director.
Because a producer and a line producer is so different, I didn't even know what I'm missing.
For me, the best part about the program is really the mentorships, because we really get that insight from the industry and what we're up against and what kind of tools we can use and craft in our journey towards creating this film and in our careers as well.
The prejudice that women, cannot work together, I was like, we really, really worked so fantastically together.
So the program really went beyond all my expectations.
I knew we were going to make a short film together, but I could never expect to meet and all these amazing women and to have experienced all that we have together. I have learned so much just by working with them, just by meeting them. It has really been life-changing.
For myself, this is so encouraging that I can create things that are engaging, action-filled pieces, but that have a positive message that will empower the next generation of girls to be more themselves.
My name is Teeny Wider, and I'm a producer.
I'm Robin Campbell, and I'm a writer.
I'm Anna Gusson, and I'm a director.
I'm Erica Miles, and I'm an animation director.
My name is Eva Pekarova, and I'm a composer.
Hi, I'm Cindy Chang, and I'm an art director. It feels great because I think a year ago I wouldn't have thought that I would be saying that today.
Hello, everyone. We're back. Everyone, please take your seat. Atención. Please take your seat. Clap once if you can hear me. Clap twice if you can hear me. Clap 3 times if you can hear me. It works for 5-year-olds as it does for adults. It's wonderful to see you all. Again, for those who just came in, I'm Julianne Crommett. I'm also your host for today, so it's wonderful to see you all. I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion professional of 13 years in media and tech and a proud board member of WIA. So it's wonderful to see you all here for those who joined us. And for those who were in the last session, wasn't that fantastic? Welcome back. Yes, let's give them a round of applause. As a reminder, for those who couldn't join us for the last session, we have been live streaming this, so for all of us watching at home, hello, we're waving hello. So the recordings will be available later. So if you want to watch a panel that you missed today or a discussion, or you just want to rewatch a fantastic moment, you can find it online and through our website, womeninanimation.org. Also, the videos we were just playing, which were some of the case studies that will be discussed later today, those videos will also be available on our website, womeninanimation.org. So the content will be up there as we go through the day and into the future. So again, welcome back. Our next panel is going to be moderated by the fabulous Jill Hopper. And where's Jill? Fantastic. And they will be tackling one of our fundamental questions today, which is, how is gender justice a solution for the labor shortage? So with that, welcome up Jill Hopper.
Good morning. I'm not alone. All righty. Everybody settled? So thank you so much for joining us this morning to unpack this incredibly important and timely subject. Got to tell you, as we were talking about it, we're going to confess to being just a little bit nervous. Because really, right, because this can be a very challenging conversation, and we know that, you know, data supports that we're not alone in feeling anxious about discussing this subject of gender justice. So for anybody else out there who's like, oh, God, how do you begin that conversation? We feel you. We know exactly what you're talking about. So we're going to spend the next hour sharing some of our ideas and anecdotes of experience. And then also, we'll be interested if any of you would like to throw in your own ideas or have any question for us as well. So we're actually going to kick off with Adriana Cohn, who is the head of production for Micros. As many of you know, it is a huge multinational company. And so she's going to begin by talking about what exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve through our conversation today. Adriana.
Hi, everyone. So Micros Animation has studios worldwide. We have studios in Bangalore, Paris, and Montreal. We also are developing hubs in Connecticut, Madrid, Germany, London, everywhere that there is talent. The world has become very complex, as you all know, in terms of the need for more and more footage and material and films well done and put out there on many different formats. So in an effort to challenge this, to meet this need, we've opened hubs everywhere. And I will tell you that with 7 billion people worldwide, we should be able to solve this shortage, and we should be able to get everything we need and hire a lot more women. But it's still proving to be a challenge. And we're going to discuss more of why that is a challenge. But there are a lot more doors open. There's a lot more opportunity out there. So in that sense, the world is getting better because of this situation, but it's also still a very complicated answer.
Pierre, our director.
Hello.
Hello. Good
everybody.
Morning. So I thought maybe you could help set the frame by talking about, in your role as the director on Bad Guys, and how important it was for you for representation and diversity on your team.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing question. I think our job as storytellers is actually be able to tell stories that are resounding and pass on messages that are more, that are accepting and speaking to everybody, really, and I deeply, profoundly believe this, whether it's to inspire, younger generations or actually have messages that can inspire everybody, really. This is the job of a storyteller. But the best way, in my opinion, to actually touch everybody, really pass on a message, is to be able to have a multitude of voices. And also making sure that the voices and the message that you're passing on through your characters and through your story are informed through authenticity and uniqueness, And so, to me, having a team that is represented and having a team that is actually quite diverse is one of the best way to get some authenticity into your story, and making sure that you can tap into the creativity and the knowledge of these of your crew, of your cast, of everybody working around you, and therefore this is why I think on Bad Guys, what we've been trying to do with the whole team is to actually reach out to everybody in the departments. As you know, big movies like this are also involving massive crews. It's around 400, you know better than I do, actually, Jill, but around 480 people working, touching the movie, directly, making the film, and then probably much more than that, also in the credits, kind of selling the film and just doing everything around it. But when we create the story itself, for me it was quite important to actually be able to connect with everybody in the crew and just get a feedback every time we're creating something, just to be able to hear and listen to the voices that we usually don't hear or don't listen to. It's so easy to be kind of sheltering yourself in your ivory tower and not, reaching out and listen to everybody who's part of your team. And so this is why I think that's a very important thing to do, just so that, culturally, because we're such a male-dominated industry, it's really, really easy to just get feedback from, your fellow male artists, and the point was to really just try to get and fish out, those little stories from everybody around, male, female, non-binary, diversity, groups and everything. And so I think it makes stories richer. It makes stories much more entertaining, much more also profound and resounding. And I think it's one of the major, biggest benefits that we can mine out of this. So having a diversity and really an inclusive team and inclusive spirit, I think to me is it provides for a better storytelling, simply.
Can you talk a little bit about the powerful women that you cast on your film in lead roles? Because I think maybe they gave you a little education too, huh?
Yeah, oh my God. Tell me about it. Yeah, of course. Well, the thing is, like, first of all, we have, I don't know if you've seen the movie or not, but in our main group of characters, one of the character, the movie is based on a series of books, right? And then out of the 5 characters in the books, there are 5 male characters. We decided to change one of the characters to make that character a female character, but it's still a female within a group of bad boys, bad guys that are like powerful, male characters. And so we had to have a female voice that was incredibly powerful and charismatic, right? So we made sure that in the cast we had somebody, and our actress is Aquafina. She's out of Asian heritage and incredibly talented, first of all, but also incredibly, strong. But that provided us with such a colorful, cast, and also she was so powerful in her, performances and in her approach of the character that she managed to actually stand out from all those males around her and just provide such an interesting performance for a character like this and make that character so much more colorful. We also had Zazie Beetz and Lily Singh. Zazie is she's actually from African American, if I'm not mistaken, African American heritage, and also from German heritage, and Lily, who's from Indian heritage, as well as queer. And those kind of voices, those kind of people that are so charismatic and are also incredibly established actresses, managed just to bring those characters to life in a way that I could even, never would have been able to write them this way, or even the rest of the crew would not have been able, because they were able, just through their, experience of life and through their, simple sheer power, they were able to actually, completely inform the characters and make them bigger, larger than life, really, And so, yeah, this is basically the experience on Bad Guys and how much it elevated the whole film, really, and the whole storytelling experience, in my opinion.
So thank you so much. One of the things I was thinking about leadership, when I was wondering about some of the questions that we might ask, I was thinking, gosh, I wonder what the female is of boss. Is it bossy? So there is obviously some gender stereotypes that are attached with leadership. And quite often, data is supporting the fact that women are not considered as relevant maybe as their male peers. And occasionally that can be illustrated by microaggressions of people interrupting women when they're talking, not soliciting their opinion or dismissing it without actually examining what they're talking about. So tricky environment. And who am I flinging this one to? Let's see. Dave, I believe. So Dave, as the head of creative for DNEG, you have an incredibly powerful job and influential job on this subject because you're casting your key talent, your key leadership on all your jobs. So I wondered if you could, or if you would mind sharing your path to allyship.
Okay, so through experiences over the last few years, had come up with trying to find a route for myself on a personal level, how I would navigate this and how I'd become an authentic ally and learn and kind of embrace just being a better human, honestly. And I came up with 3 paths or guides, tenets, whatever you want to call it, for myself. And it ended up being never refuse to have the conversation, because if we start talking about it, we just end up back where we were. And we always have to be willing to talk, and we always have to be willing to have the conversation. And that puts you in an incredibly vulnerable state, and along with that, you have to be willing to be vulnerable and learn, at least for me. The second one was, I've got the order wrong now, haven't I? Yeah, no, I got it. So the second one was never be quiet in the room. I know I'm guilty of that. I've absolutely been quiet in the room when I've seen things that are not great and not wonderful, and to stop being quiet in the room, and to be a voice, and a voice of, you know, correcting things when they go wrong, and being able to go, that wasn't right, and it be in the room, not after the room, but in the room. That's a frightening thing as well when you consider sometimes the people who might be in that room. And then the third thing was to aim to become a safe space. And if I could create myself as a safe space, and via that start to hopefully spread that across the company, or my company, the company I'm around, I should say, there may be people of all different genders and different racial profiles, everything, could just find a safe space, that this is a place, this is a company where you can speak openly. And so we looked for an example of this, a little anecdotal example that I am proud of, I hope, and I think it worked, I guess, the way, according to plan. We were doing a short film, and there was something in the boards that I didn't notice, director didn't notice, animation director, who, guess what, was male as well, didn't notice, and it seemed fine. And it was brought up by our editor, our producer, and our VFX soup, and they came to me and they said, you know, we know this is minor, but this is not great. The way, you know, the kind of the man and the woman in this are interacting in this particular moment could be better. And they were like, you know, we should talk about this. And I'm like, well, why aren't you just going straight to the director? And there was that hesitation of like, are we allowed to? And so we had to give this thing of like, no, you're expected to. You're absolutely expected to. You don't need permission. This makes the film better. This is what you should do. And, you know, we also then turned around and said, well, I shouldn't be in that meeting. Why should I have to be in the meeting? Does a man have to hold hands kind of thing? This was ridiculous. So we took it, and it was an instant like, oh my God, we didn't realize, let's correct it. And the story ends up better for that. And so for me, in that moment, we had a group of phenomenal creatives who were willing to approach the company and say, we think we should change this. We think this is wrong, because they felt safe, they felt secure, and all of those things kind of lined up. And for me, that was like a little micro win. It's maybe a little anecdotal thing, it's a little moment, but if we can do those little wins and those little things, they become bigger wins, and so on and so forth.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
We clapped too the first time he said that.
He's good.
Camille. So we've talked a great deal about the experience of being a woman, not just in our business, but as a professional woman. And while there are a lot of men who are also now choosing to be caregivers, either to elderly parents or to their children, predominantly this falls to women to step into this incredibly important work. So I was wondering if you would share some of your ideas that I know you're a long way down the road on, and I super applaud you for this, but the concept of how we might be able to create onboard or ramps to bring people back into the workplace after they've taken that period of leave and continue to contribute. And I know a lot of people are concerned or face prejudice of, oh, you're not relevant anymore. You've been out of the workplace for 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years. However, they still have that extraordinary creative contribution to make. So educate us.
I'll try. But I think there's an important part of the workforce that is missed, because when we talk about talent development, we kind of tend to focus on early career. And while we do see I've seen a lot more female talent coming in through school, right, into the workforce. There's some parts that we actually forget about, and it's the, women or non-binary people who may have been in the workforce for a while and maybe they've dropped out. And to your point, like whether to care for their children, or they didn't move up in their career like they wanted to. They got frustrated and they left the industry. They might have been overlooked for positions, right? All these things contribute to that. But there's a whole workforce out there that is completely ignored. And so, one of the things that we're trying to implement in our talent development program at Nickelodeon is, we want to focus on the early career, but there's also, putting pathways in and accessibility for women and non-binary people who have left the workforce. And I think there's actually one more layer to that too, and it's within the companies. It's actually within the workforce that already exists, because probably a lot of us in the room, we've been passed over for positions. We haven't been looked at. We haven't been part of, the mobility upwards into roles for career development and pathways. So it's really from studios and executives and leaders of companies to take a look into your existing workforce, but also take a look at, other people out there in the industry, because these are skilled people, right? They have the skill set, but maybe they're, some of the skills may be a bit out of date. So it's creating programs and pathways to be able to train those people to get them back in, to be part of this work, because they have the skills. It's just making the opportunity for them and, seeing them and acknowledging, the level of knowledge that they have and can bring to your studio, your company, your department.
Thank you. I was wondering if you would also mind sharing a little bit about your own experience, because you have, now you're the VP of Recruiting and Talent Development at Nickelodeon, but prior to that, you have contributed to so many of our companies in animation. So you've had, I think, a rare view from the inside on this topic. And as a woman of color as well in our industry, I think it would be super valuable for us to hear from you about your experience, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, not a problem. When we were prepping for this panel, Jill and I had a conversation, and as I started to think about, there's so many, we could be here all day just talking about this subject. And one of the things that I think it's important to realize is that, first of all, being a woman and then being a woman of color, what I had said to Jill is it's almost like you have two strikes against you, because you're a woman and then you're a woman of color. And so you already, Munya was talking earlier about in the culture in Africa, you're taught to be quiet and you're not taught to speak up. But also in America, when you're a woman of color, you kind of this is your place and you don't want to make any waves and you don't want to make trouble. So when you get an opportunity, you're just I have to stay safe. I need this job. That's the mentality that's going on in your mind. So when you go into meetings and you show up, it's a little bit of that extended, because you don't want to make waves. You want to keep your place. And I think it's important to start to learn to have a voice and start to learn to speak up, right? And start to try to earn your space at the table. You have that space, right? And some of that comes through mentorship, and some of that comes through sponsorship too. And I feel like my role now in my position is to read the room and look at those people. And what I've started to do in my meetings is, if I notice if there's a woman in the room and she's not being heard, I try to make a space for that person to be able to share their thoughts with the rest of the group. Right? Or then there's the sponsorship part of it, which is when that person isn't in the room and you want to shed a light on, maybe somebody's done a great job for you, or something that they've done, and you sponsor that person. You can speak up and be like, Jill did an amazing job on this project and she was so great. So you're their sponsor when they're not there, right? Those are things that we can do as leaders and directors and heads of studios. And it's another, I love that word, micro win. Because we can be the voice for people. And one more thing that we talked about was, I'm actually a complete introvert, and speaking in public is not my favorite thing to do, but, you learn from experience, right? And there's some amazing people in this room who were my sponsors and helped guide me. And, it is something that you practice, and it's like when you have those people who I'm looking at you, Dawn, when you have those people who kind of help you along the way and really make a space for you and push you and show you, that means the world. So if you can be that person for somebody else, that's going to be huge for, a woman, person of non-binary, a person who's diverse from an underrepresented community.
And I think you're right. It's from what Dave was saying, it's creating in the studios, in the workplace, the space to be safe, and at the same time making sure that we foster the culture of being able to speak up and feeling comfortable despite everything that you've learned throughout your life or your own education, your culture, whatever. In those places, you can speak up, you can advocate for yourself, you can rise to being a leader, to being a leader, a great creator, whatever, but also within the studio, generating the space to have that safety, to be able to do that in a comfortable way.
Yeah, and I have, there's another lady in the room, Angelique's back there, and she's probably mad at me for pointing her out, but amazing leader who just really is there, and, you know, I can go to Angelique and I can, you know, bounce ideas, and she's just right there, and it's like yes and so you really need that support. Just helps build and build and build. So
well, I think it goes further than you know, we're here to tell stories and be creative and find creative ways to tell stories and that. And when you start to create that safe space, people start feeling safer about experimenting, innovating, trying new ideas and that. And so that whole safety of like, go out, push, that all breeds within the same realm. And, you know, if you want to get down to the business of things, that ends up making better stories at the end of the day as well.
And by the way, it just goes beyond, you know, male-female debate. It goes beyond anything, you know, it's like minorities and diversity and all of this, obviously, you know.
It's actually two-pronged, right? The first prong is the prong where we, as the studio execs, make the studio safe. We put the artist first, and you make sure the artist knows they're safe. They make sure that they realize that they're allowed to fail and not fail. They're allowed to try, they're allowed to experiment, because at the end of the day, you want them to be an artist. You want them to be able to push themselves to a limit and do everything they can to make the film better, because they are the stewards of the film. They are the people who go out there and make your film as great as it could be. And we are there to protect them from that. But it's a dual responsibility, right? It's the artist has to take some courage, feel the courage, go out there with the courage to test their boundaries and know that they can do that. And then we have to be the ones to say, yes, you're okay doing this. And, you know, it happens across the board, regardless of gender, regardless of color. But what happens for women and for people of color and underrepresented communities is that step is a harder step to take. It's much harder to take. Now, if you look at my career, you'll never believe that was true for me, because you know, I speak more frankly than anybody you'll ever meet, and I have a tendency to be a bullet to the brain, you know, in any meeting. But the reason I do that is because it's important to show other people, maybe not the way I'm doing it. Please don't do it the way I do it.
I think it's a requirement for a head of production. I know you're talking about.
Definitely don't do it the way I do it. But you see, you can do it. You know what I mean? Like there are meetings where you see someone else step up, someone else speak up. You suddenly realize, oh, okay, it's okay for me to speak up. And that's the thing that we can all do, whether you realize it or not, is you mentor by the way you act. You mentor by what you say. You mentor by not just the doors you open, but you mentor by simply acknowledging what everybody else is doing, you know? And that is the piece that we can all do, every single one of us in this room, because that is the piece that changes people's lives.
It's listening also. It's very interesting because to me, it's like a compound problem, isn't it? Because I'm talking about more from the artistic side. As an artist, you're already putting yourself, your soul out there as an artist, and just you have to open yourself. You have to be able just to show your art. This is scary in itself, whether you're a woman, a man, or anyone else, you know. But then again, if on top of that you have what we're talking about, which is basically, you know, the inequality in chances within, you know, between male and female, it's a compound problem, and therefore it's becoming even harder to be able just to let yourself out there and speak up, you know. And so, again, we're all coming back to leadership, being able to listen to individual stories, listen to whatever you have to say, and doing that in a very compassionate and very caring way, you know. But yeah, definitely this is a field in which we are very vulnerable, and we need to acknowledge that as much as possible.
You know, I think all of you mentioned the power of mentorship, and I just want to posit out an idea that for maybe some of the women who leave to be caregivers, that maybe we could consider consultation arrangement with them, maybe a couple of hours a month as a mentor for both, for all genders actually, coming up through the system so that they could remain connected to our companies and give the extraordinary gift of, you know, helping someone develop their confidence and their knowledge as well. So I leave that to a bunch of studio heads, see if we could pull that off.
It doesn't take very much time. I mean, I actually try my hardest to carve out at least, like, I give myself a couple of hours spread out over a week. And they're like 15-minute calls, 30-minute calls. And if I spread them out over the week, it's, but I always try to leave space to be able to take those phone calls. And so when someone reaches out and says, I'd love to meet with you and talk about how I get back. And I'm like, absolutely, because that space is already saved on my calendar, and then I can fill it in with hopefully mentoring somebody, or even just, they may not even be related to the industry, but you can give them the resources and the knowledge to be able to then, you should talk to this person or you should talk to this person. So yeah.
Well, in Canada, In Canada, they have a full year off. And there were several women who were pregnant when I arrived. And I literally went to Montreal office. I had a conversation with them, and I was just like, I want you back. Your space is going to be here. I'm going to spend all year figuring out how to bring you back in seamlessly. And when I called them, right before they restarted, I was like, are you ready to come back? And they were like, yes, please. So I mean, that was such a relief for me. But, I knew they were coming back. I knew when they were coming back. And you create that landing for them, You create that moment where they could work part-time, because as much as they say, yes, please, you're going to miss your kid. You just spend a whole year with them, right? So you figure out what is the natural landing and the re-entry, and then you make that happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. There was an IT company, I think in the 70s in England, that was created predominantly with female employees. And because of their their family obligations, what they really championed was job sharing in that environment. And I do think that's something that we don't seem to lean into too much, but it may be something else that we could unpick in terms of part of the solution, to continuing to sustain a more inclusive environment.
Well, I think one of the benefits of hopefully the back end of the last couple of years of this pandemic is the realization that we can do a portion of this remotely. We can look at employee abilities and where people need to be in a completely different way. And so bringing people back into the workforce doesn't have to be that hard line of, if you're not in the office for 10 hours a day, this kind of thing. And so there are now creative ways to bring people into a hybrid workflow that allows for more responsibility in your personal life as well.
So the one thing I want to point out is it's really hard sometimes to manage a diverse room. And when we're talking about diversity, not simply of gender, but potentially age and experience, and then also cultural heritage. Right, and I'm gonna, everybody said that this is okay, but I'm actually gonna share with you that this panel represents 5 different nations of birth. So South African, French, never believe it, American,
but I'm first generation because my mom is actually from Central America.
Whereabouts?
Honduras.
Iran. And you'll never guess I'm from England. But when I discovered that WIA had assembled this extraordinary group that was so broad in its diversity, it was a moment for us to really also sit and consider how tricky it is sometimes to navigate those background differences. I mean, I will share with you that I married a Frenchman. And in England, if we're having a dinner conversation, it's quite measured, we're quite polite most of the time. And the first time that I went to join his family was for Christmas Eve, and there was loads of them, and it was all, like 25 tables of 25, like meandering through the house. And after a couple of hours, I had to step out, and it was snowing. And so I'm standing in a snowy field because I was like, oh my goodness. And he comes out and he says to me, you okay? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't stand it. Like, everybody's yelling at each other. It's so aggressive. And he's like, what are you talking about? We're just having a conversation. Now, tricky because my French was, and is only now, So, but it was the tone which I heard them converse in that caused me to shut down, get defensive, and be agitated by that. So it's just a little personal, anecdote, but it can be, and we got married and had 2 kids. No, 3, sorry, can't count.
Which one's your favorite?
Love you all. Right?
Never own up to who that third one was.
Goodness me. The life of a working woman, obviously. Sometimes you get a little forgetful. All right. So where we're going with this, sorry for that. Okay. Where we're going with this.
What's their name again?
Ages, names.
Oh, I can't do birth dates, actually. That is well known, and my children will all roll their eyes at that. Like, even though I do numbers, I can't remember dates. Anyway, Pierre, your crew was very multinational, and I was just curious if you're prepared to share any anecdotes about your consciousness when you're running dailies to make sure that you can navigate, surf through all of these different cultural backgrounds as, part of an inclusive environment.
Yeah, it's a little tricky, I gotta say, on Bad Guys specifically, because what happened was we obviously made the film during the pandemic, and at that point everybody's home, and you're really interacting with just one person at a time almost, because as you all know, when you're on Zoom, nobody can speak at the same. I mean, it's quickly a mess, and so that was kind of what hindered a little bit that kind of dynamism that we were all looking forward to just experiencing in the film, especially because we had such a diverse crew, and just how do we mine as much as possible the varied background that we had in the crew. So again, a little bit hindered by the pandemic itself. But I think, to me, it's like, again, seeing this as a strength, and not just being afraid of it, completely embracing it, completely being able to just listen to everybody, unique voices again, and that's what I started with, unique voices, because again, they will make your story for a better story, and in the experience for a better experience, because you're gonna come out of there enriched and having learned something, So how do you do it? How do you, make sure that you listen and understand reactions and understand, because everything is basically from your own heritage and your own culture and how you've been raised up, and what you were describing, your anecdote you were describing is spot on, actually. Yeah, because I know how we Europeans, French specifically, can be. It's like sometimes bluntly honest, and for instance, in an American studio, it doesn't always work this way. We're trying in the US. We're trying to be a lot more measured, a little bit more, making sure that you understand the other person's point of view, and just making sure that you can be a lot more careful in the way you give notes or receive feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so that adjustment in terms of culture it's very important to be able to make. But I think to me it always comes down to the question of being kind. It's always coming down to kindness, and this is incredibly important in a work environment like ours, where we're a collaborative medium. We're not necessarily saving the world either. We're making cartoons, and so therefore, but we're also making that in a very honest way and trying to tell really good stories. And it's a work environment, but at the same time, we all want the same thing. We all want to make great movies, or great TV shows or great, content. How can we foster enough energy and kind energy just to be able to get the best out there? So it's being able to listen, it's being able just to understand someone else's background and someone else's culture and someone else's personalities, to be able to include that as much as you can in your meetings. Again, not the best experience on Bad Guys because we were so disconnected and I think that's something that, in particular, in this production, at DreamWorks, a lot of the production staff is female heavy, very, very, like all the production supervisors, production coordinators are mostly female, right, Jill? And the care, and the feminine touch, just to be able just to gather the crew, gather the teams, making sure that you're being, very carefully nurtured and taken care of. I think that's so specifically feminine, in my opinion, or maybe that's because I'm just an old fart, but I don't know. But it was so incredible to see those young women, making sure that everybody felt safe, included, listened to. There was everything was provided for the crew to be able to feel good, because it was such a different and challenging period of time for a big production like this to be put together and executed. I mean, obviously we're not the only one. Everybody went through this, but as you all know, we had a little bit of a window in the life of everyone during the pandemic, and we all challenged through it. All were challenged through it, and we all were, like struggling with our children, with our, health and everything, and so therefore, how can you not be caring for your crew and your teams, during these kind of times? Again, all these young women just did it like with, it was incredible. It was absolutely brilliant. The way it was, it came together, and just couldn't be more thankful for them to be there and just caring for everyone,
Were you going to say something, Camille?
No, I was just listening. I mean, I think if you go back again to the cultural question, it is about perspective too, isn't it? And it's really, to your point about the story, like where you hear people shouting, but they're just having a conversation. It is really, and I think you had mentioned earlier about listening. It is about sometimes pausing and read the room, right? And it's, again, going back to it, with all of us sitting here, it's about leadership. And in a leadership role, it's listening as much. Like, leadership is about so many different things, and listening is one of those things. Reading the room and being watchful and watching out for your team and your people. And going back to, the panel before us talked about cultural, it's global. So there are cultural differences, and every single person in this room is diverse in one way or another, right?
Absolutely.
So really just reading the room and being able to, if something's off, can you find that, and then can you create a space for that? And in some cultures, you don't speak up, right? And in some cultures, it's very difficult for people to do that because that's just not how they're raised. So your expectation has to change as a leader, and then you have to figure out a way to hopefully compromise and get the whole group working together. So, yeah.
I think also curiosity goes into that as well. Like if you're curious enough to try and unpack someone else's experience, then that usually gives you a path to be able to figure out how you can include them in the conversation, where sometimes, gender and background aside, I'm an introvert, which oddly I am. And when you told me you were an introvert, I was like, no way. Like, okay, how many introverts on this panel? All right, Dave. I would like you. I know you're staring at me, and now I'm feeling intimidated.
No, we've entered like therapy session.
We
right?
have entered therapy. Well, we're going to go right deep now, and I do want to thank you very much for allowing me to ask you this question, because I know it's incredibly personal, and one of the trickiest questions, I think. So, as a white South African, can you talk to us about how that has influenced your commitment to diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, so this is a tough one. So I grew up at an age during apartheid, and I was given everything because I was a white male in Africa. Let's call a spade a spade. It was also of a unique age that I went to college right at the time that we were starting to become sane, and we released Mandela. I had nothing to do with that. But Mandela was released, and we were talking, how this came up is we were talking about my single most prized possession is my identity document from that time. And in it, I have a stamp on the date that I call it voted sanity, but it was the date that we voted free and fair elections. And that single stamp is my single most prized possession, because it was finally this moment that we were going to do, as I call it, not the right thing, just the sane thing. But I grew up with all the privileges and got into the industry again with a bunch of white dudes. And very fortunately in my career, moved out in the mid-90s to the US. And throughout that whole time, there was always this, I call myself African. I'm truly African in every fiber of my being. It plays into me everywhere I can go. And as the years went on, and I was more and more fortunate in my career and kind of stepped up, this moment came where I wanted to try and find a way to pay back. And, immediately you go, wow, we'll do this thing, and we'll just go back in there and we'll get work. And then immediately you're a colonist again. And you're doing the same thing that put the continent in the same place for generations. And so this moment had to come where, even though I'm African, even though I was born there, even though I spend a huge amount of time there, I had to flick the switch and start to learn again. And I had to, again, become vulnerable. And so we were talking about this. I just spent a week back home, as it were, but for the first time trying to have a conversation going, teach me. How can we make something happen in Africa? How can we grow the animation in Africa? And how can we make it authentic above all, right? We have a massive staff shortage in this industry across the globe. There are ridiculously talented people all around the world, but how do we do this? What can we do, and how can we learn? And I think that put the bullet point on, once again, that we spoke about vulnerability again, and it is just being willing to be vulnerable. And I know I was supposed to say this at the end, but I'm going to say it now. Is if I could encourage people to do anything, particularly men in this industry, is to turn around and be vulnerable. Because I will guarantee you there are more people of race, gender, everybody. There are a ton of, just as you described, women who are so good at caring for you that will wrap their arms around you and walk that path with you. And it's not a scary place. And so throughout that whole thing, that would be my one thing, is just be vulnerable.
Agreed. There's also something that I was kind of thinking about, is the way we organize our productions, where it's a very pyramidal system. But it's a system that is made for efficiency in production, because, ultimately you have to make decisions, and it's something. But it's not a human it's not a human, design either. It's very efficient for the work, for the creativity also, because maybe not for the creativity, for the work at least, and the production itself, yes. But I found myself so many times, in the position of a director, not feeling that people didn't dare reaching, didn't dare asking, didn't dare, even though I've known these people, I've worked with all my team for years and years and years, but because all of a sudden you're in a position where you're being shielded by, a whole system around you that prevents you from being kind of reached at, and you're like, if you end up being slightly isolated, and people don't dare because you're the director or you're the producer. And I think that's something that and less so even women or you know what I mean, or people who don't dare, or introvert, you know, people who don't even dare asking you for anything, because now all of a sudden you have that title, you know. And I think that's something that we need just to look into a little bit, and just being able to, we can make the difference between this is a production system, but it's not necessarily the human way of doing it. You know what I mean?
I do, and I have some excellent, great news for you.
Great.
As the mother that we have now established of 3
sure about that.
young adults who are 25, 22, and 19. Took me 20 minutes to remember, but we're there. No, I actually think that the good news is that the new generation coming up agrees with you and is coming in with a hammer to that pyramid. And the desire for the new students coming through, who are also, interestingly, over the last few years, have been more gender equal in terms of their graduation numbers, and are now edging that maybe the ladies are... There are more ladies graduating than gentlemen, actually. But the point being that I think they're going to bring with them in this moment of, you know, I think it's another industrial revolution, to be honest with you, like how our workforce is organized, what the expectation is for that creative experience. I think they're going to shake it up. And then I've never heard it actually described as being more human, but I really like the way you said that, because I'm like, you know what, I think you're right. And in so doing, I think we're going to achieve even more extraordinary creativity.
But I think it plays off of what David said, right? When you start to listen to other people rather than go in and colonize and institute a structure that has existed for hundreds of years. When you start to listen, you start to hear there are cracks in that structure, and it really doesn't work. And part of listening is, you know, staying an hour later, leaving your door open, allowing people to come in to talk to you, right? The people who can't. So just, you know, being that approachable. But when you hear something that doesn't align with what you believe, what you think, taking a step back, right, and trying to figure out if there are multiple truths in this world, how do you resolve a world in which their truth can live with your truth, right? And that is what I feel needs to happen more and more and more.
Very well said.
Oh, sorry.
No, I second that and that and that and that, because I honestly think what you said about they're coming in with a hammer, you know, that workforce is actually already here. They're already here, because if you notice, like my daughter who's 15.
I think there's a few in the room.
Yeah, they're in the room, right? There we go. And even my daughter who's 15 is, you know, Mama, use your pronouns. You know, she's already teaching me, and so, you know, we're here to kind of usher in that next generation, and they are breaking down that system. So I think as we continue and as this goes, like, we will start to see more women, we'll see more non-binary, we'll see more diversity. It's here. So we just have to figure out a way, how do we listen, how do we work with, you know, the talent that's coming in, because they're already here. And I mean, my one thing is, I think, you know, make a space at the table. You know, our roles here is we can make that space at the table and mentor and listen and sponsor and keep the door open for the next person to come in and bring somebody in the boat with you.
Superb.
No, you keep it.
I got it.
Well, I think we're about to wrap up. Are there any last words? I mean, you guys were pretty extraordinary in that end there. I think we've got the vulnerability. Keep someone in the boat with you. I thought that was amazing. And, you know, just your contributions have been extraordinary. And thank you so much for swinging through this. Anyone want to throw anything else in?
I'm going to break it now.
I do want to say one thing. It's really critical that you learn. I don't care who you are, where you are in the business. You have to learn to advocate for yourself. You have to. It's a skill to be successful. It's a skill to get people to hear you. It's a skill, and it is at every level. Whether you're negotiating for another contract, whether you're talking about someone that you think is important, whether you're talking about a story idea, whether you think what you spent 3 days working on is more important than what they asked you to do. You need to learn to advocate for yourself. But you don't, the key is not to do it in an angry way, right? Just know you are allowed to have that opinion. You are. You're allowed to be you. You're allowed to talk from you. And just speak from there. You know, and that's valid, that's real, that's important, and that will connect a lot better. Because if I get approached that aggressively, guess what? I get aggressive, right? I get defensive, I get all sorts of things. But if I'm approached with kindness and respect, you get kindness and respect. So if we can all commit to that conversation, then I know we can change everything. I know we can. This isn't an if, it will happen. It's just how we do it that I'd like to put a little plug in for that conversation.
Well, I had two last things to say. Thank you guys so much for being such an engaged audience. I mean, you've really lifted the energy in this room and helped us, enjoy this conversation. It's been a pleasure, and I would like you to join me in thanking our panelists here for their vulnerability.
Thank you.
Their vulnerability, their insight, and their passion for this cause. So you guys totally rocked it. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks to you. A lot of work on it. Thank you.
Oh, so I need to ask the boss of the room. I'm not sure who that is, but do we have time for a few questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, thumbs up.
Boss in the room.
Boss in the room. Okay. Oh my gosh, my back. Yeah.
Thank you. That was really fun.
Stand up.
Okay. Well, hi again. My name is Alejandra. I'm from Mexico. I am a production coordinator right now in my own country. And it's no lie when I say that since I decided to get into this industry, it's always been like my major dream to work either in Nickelodeon or in DreamWorks. So it's ridiculous that you're both here. Like, I couldn't have planned it better. But I think one thing that people from outside of the United States face mostly and as an obstacle is that to get hired to work in the States, we need the work visa. And it's not easy to get it. And sometimes in the process of applying to a job, you're sometimes not even considered because you don't have it. And it's too much trouble to get it for you. And there's so many candidates that maybe it's easier to get someone who already has it, or already lives there. So in regards of advocating for myself.
You're hired.
Well, thank you. Well, that's it. What should I do, or what do I have to do to stand out and to get that shot, to be considered fairly? Because I know it's not because you want to be unfair, but I understand that sometimes it's hard. You lose people in so many applications and so many people who want the same job. But I mean, I know I have the drive. I know I have the passion. So what would you recommend that I do to get the shot?
Well, first of all, you're here. So, and you have a whole room full of people. There's some influencers in this room right now, right? And they see you and they hear you.
Hi.
So, yeah, she's got it, right? You guys, I can see all you recruited going like, yeah. So I think the one thing, do your research. This is one thing I say to people all the time is do your research, because one thing about Nickelodeon is we're a company and we do outsource, right? So you may not be able to get that visa right away to come into the States, but we work with so many other companies around the world. So, the majority of the work that we do is actually being done in other countries. So do your research and find out what those companies are, and maybe your pathway is going through another country and company, right?
Yeah.
So that's one way to do that. But showing up, going to things like this, becoming parts of organizations like Women in Animation or other organizations, festivals, conferences, you know, Pixelat's coming, right?
Yeah.
We're going to be there. So, you know, I can't tell you how many people we've hired and I've hired in my career who have done just what you've done, where they stand up and they make themselves known, and people will figure out a way, right? But the fact that you're here says a lot already, so.
Well, that's good.
You're advocating for yourself.
Well, Pixelatl is in Guadalajara this year, and I live there, so
There you
I'll
go.
see you there.
We'll see you in Mexico.
Well, thank you so much.
She said DreamWorks too.
Yeah.
Good day, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Dr. Tsepo Maka, aka Dr. T. I'm actually a medical doctor. I'm watching all of you not wearing your mask here, and I'm very concerned. I'm a medical doctor turned producer from Johannesburg, South Africa, from Keblo Studios, and I just want to attest to what David Prescott said. If you're not able to go to America looking for a job, they are able to come to you. So David came to our studio and he became very vulnerable, because at our studio, you've got two black girls that are leading a studio that has an Indian, a colored girl, white people we're working with. And so he came to us and became vulnerable and was really tearful when he said, I want to hear from you. I want you to tell me more about what we can do together. And so I just wanted to say, coming from South Africa, David, thank you very much for coming from America to come to South Africa and to talk to us and ask us what we can do together. And we're looking forward to bringing African stories that are led by black girls to the world. And thank you for being vulnerable. I saw a white man from South Africa with tears in his eyes, and I was touched because you saw what we did. And so in South Africa, we do have multiple languages. We've got different cultures, 11 official languages. So if you want to deal with diversity, try it in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Hi, I hope you can hear me with my mask on. First, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for sharing your insights and experiences. That's really powerful. My question is specifically for you, Camille, if you don't mind. I'm part of an animation studio in the southeast of Ireland, so we have lots of recruitment issues. It's hard enough convincing people to come to Ireland, but it's even harder to convince them to not land in a capital city. So I'm wondering around the return to work initiatives that you've had, which sound great, and we've tried them ourselves, but our biggest problem has been reaching the people who might be considering returning to work, those that are actively looking to return to work, but also those that don't even realise that it's an option. And I'm wondering, did you have any difficulties in, I suppose, finding candidates for your return to work initiatives? And if you'd like to share any hints and tips to help us do the same. Thank you.
I think a lot of studios right now, we're actually in the process of, you know, how we navigate that. So it's a global thing, to be honest, right now. We're all figuring it out. We've just started returning back to work, and I think it's about what this whole pandemic has done, that it's been chaotic, right? We never imagined that this was coming. But out of the chaos, it's also created a lot of opportunities. It allowed us to make our projects and our movies from our living rooms and our bedrooms and right? Now we're navigating the returning back. And there is this moment right now where we have to figure out, how do we do this? And again, I think it comes from the top. That's the hard part. It really comes from the top, and having that understanding of how do we make this work with this new world that we're living in, and we're figuring it out. I mean, we don't have all the answers right now, but we're figuring it out. But we have, at least at Nickelodeon and Paramount, we have our leadership who really understand that you can't be in a meeting and pick up your kids now, or you can't, you know, so that understanding, you know, we're all going through navigating our health, right? Navigating our time. We've been on Zoom for almost 24/7 since, you know, I don't know about you all, but I've worked more during the pandemic than before. So I think we're really in this moment of just trying to be patient, figure it out, communicate, make sure that you're listening to the people and their concerns as they're trying to come back into the office, because there's not really a one-size-fits-all for everybody, but we're really all going through it together. And hopefully when we come back next year, we'll have some solutions that we have this wonderful hybrid moments at all of our studios. So, I wish you luck as we go through it too.
I'd like to throw in a comment on that. I think a lot of people who have left and may be open to coming back are also gated by the assumption that means you want me to work 40, 45, 50 or more hours a week. So I do think that maybe another door for us to walk through is this notion of more part-time work or job sharing, or just different ways of measuring contribution that isn't just by counting footage or counting shots. So I do think that's something we should take back to our studios and figure out how we could reset the expectation of what maybe coming back to work looks like, or for someone who has different life choices and they want to spend half their time climbing in a mountain and the other time paying for it, front row could be your new employees, actually. They're all like nodding and so on, so I would check out the front row. But there might be a different way that we want to approach some of our workflows to be able to engage people like that. Are we done with time, or do we have one more? We're done with one more. Come on down. Yes. We did it. You can sit in the white chair if you like.
Hi, I'm Melissa Bennett. I'm a feature writer. I'm an introvert. I'm a 40-something mum of two kids, but I often get their name muddled up with the dog. Animation writing is actually my fourth career. It took me a really long journey to find it, because when I was at school, oh my God, a million years ago now, animation was just not something you were given an option to do. So it's taken me a long time to find the belief and confidence to kind of come here and do what I really love doing. Sorry. And then I came to Annecy in 2019 with a script, and I came to the Women in Animation conference. And I really felt the odds were stacked against me for anyone taking me seriously. But when I went to that conference, I met up with Alison Mann, who was with Sony, and she said, "Oh well, if you've got an idea, pitch it." I'd never been in the industry. This was my first ever script, and I was pitching to Alison Mann, and she was absolutely lovely. She loved my ideas, and it didn't quite work out with Alison, but it did work out with another wonderful producer, and it's in development now. Thank you. Thank you. But what I wanted, and I would have never talked in 2019, but what I wanted to say was it's so inspiring and brilliant for people like me, who I think is a group which is often, not marginalised, but I'd imagine there are quite a few people like me who are sort of later on in their careers, and it's just trying to kind of get that way in is really tricky. But I have found, being really encouraged, and it's been amazing, who will kind of take you seriously and mentor you. And anyway, I just wanted to big it up for the 40-somethings who trying to break into animation. And thank you very much. So thank you for these events.
All right, so this is our drop the mic moment. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and a true privilege to be here today. So we'll see you all about. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone just hang out for a second because we're going to show a case study video and then just a few instructions on lunch and post-lunch. So if you can hang out for just a few minutes and then we'll break for lunch. Yes? All right. Here comes the video. I told you, just see me all day. All right? Be right back.
Women only reach 22.5% of leadership in animated series and films. In MIA, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing women in the animation industry, we want to make a difference. That's why we've created MIANIMA. MIANIMA is the only mentorship program that helps Spanish and Latin American women develop their animated series and film projects. Our goals are to discover, support, and consolidate female talent. To achieve that, MIANIMA offers personalized mentorships.
Con las mentorías me parece un lujazo contar con profesionales de primera.
Tiene mentorías tanto de guión como de producción y me parece que está muy bien porque aborda el proyecto desde muchos ángulos.
Y las masterclasses que dieron ellas te complementan súper bien, además que ves a otras mujeres que están ahí también, en cargos también altos, pero tirando de la animación y entonces te da motor, ¿no?
If you'd like to support the program or know more about it, don't hesitate to contact us. animacionesmia.com/mianima. Mianima at animacionesmia.com. Women together are stronger.
All right, a little round of applause for Mia. Yes? Woo! Felicidades, muchísimas gracias a ustedes. Muchísimas gracias por lo que están haciendo en Latinoamérica and España. Yeah, I'm bilingual. Wow. And so with that, just a little announcement for lunch. We're going to break now for lunch. We will need to all be back here at 2:15 local time or 14:15 in standard. So please come back here 2:15 p.m., 14:15 for our afternoon sessions. And we will see you then. Enjoy lunch, all right? Bon appétit.